Once, the world breathed freely. Forests rose like cathedrals, their canopies stitched together by light. Oceans sang to the moon, tides whispering ancient lullabies to the shore. The air was clean, heavy with the scent of rain and soil, and every sunrise carried the quiet promise of tomorrow. Back then, the earth didn't ask much of us. Only respect, only balance. But slowly, almost politely, we began to take more than we gave. One tree became 10. 10 became 1,000. Rivers were bent, mountains were carved open, skies grew darker, yet we told ourselves it was necessary. We called it progress. We called it growth. We celebrated numbers on screens, steel reaching for the clouds, cities glowing brighter than the stars they replaced. We moved faster, louder, higher, convinced that forward was the same as better. And while we were busy building upward, the roots beneath us were dying. Soil turned thin and tired. Seasons lost their rhythm. Animals vanished quietly, without headlines or goodbyes. The wind grew warmer. The oceans rose. The storms learned our names. Still, we didn't stop. Because the damage was slow. Because it didn't all happen at once. Because it was easier to look ahead than to look down. Until one day, the silence became impossible to ignore. A forest without birds. A river without life. A sky that no longer remembered blue. And in that silence, a question waited. Not shouted, not demanded, just whispered. What will remain when everything we depend on is gone? The world is still breathing, but now it's struggling. And whether it recovers depends on what we choose to give back before the last roots let go. There was a time when shade was everywhere, when trees stood shoulder to shoulder, offering rest to the earth below, when leaves danced with the wind, catching sunlight and breaking it into 1,000 gentle greens. Birds stitched the sky with sound, their calls weaving mornings into something alive and whole. In those days, silence was rare. Life announced itself in rustles, chirps, and the soft hum of insects hidden in the grass. Rivers moved slowly, unafraid, and the ground stayed cool beneath bare feet. Even the air felt kind. But time passed, and convenience crept in quietly. A tree fell here, another there. Roads cut through forests like clean, confident lines, and fields were emptied to make space for concrete. The shade thinned. The song softened. We barely noticed at first. There was always another place to go, another sound to drown out what was missing. Engines replaced wings. Screens replaced skies. Now, there are echoes where songs once lived. Branches stand like forgotten memories. Nests sit empty, waiting for owners who will never return. The wind still moves, but it carries dust instead of pollen, heat instead of comfort. Children grow up learning the names of brands before the names of birds. Shade becomes something we build, not something that grows. And the quiet spreads, not as peace, but as absence. Yet even now, the earth remembers. Beneath cracked soil, seeds are waiting. In the silence, life is listening. All it asks is space, time, and the courage for us to stop long enough to hear what we've lost and decide what we're willing to bring back. The earth remembers what we try to forget. It remembers when rivers ran clear, when forests cooled the sky, when the future felt endless. We were never separate from this place. We were part of it, until we chose convenience over care. And then there was one, not the tallest, not the strongest. Its bark was scarred by time, its branches uneven, reaching more out of habit than hope. Just the last. It stood where a forest once breathed, where roots had tangled like old friendships beneath the soil. Now, it stood alone, surrounded by stone, steel, and shadows that never cooled the ground. The wind still found it, careful, respectful, as if afraid this breath might be the one that finally breaks it. Birds circled, then passed by. There was nowhere to land, no chorus to join. Yet the tree remained, holding memories in its rings. Rainstorms, summers, 1,000 sunrises no one remembered anymore. It gave shade anyway. A small patch of mercy in a burning world. A quiet reminder that life doesn't disappear all at once, it fades, patiently, while we look away. And as long as that one tree stood, the earth was still telling us something. It isn't too late. It stood not because it was spared, but because it endured. This tree became a mirror, a reminder of everything we were losing, and everything we still could save. Every generation is given a choice: to take or to protect, to look away or to stand still long enough to understand what is at stake. This was not just about a tree. It was about responsibility, about remembering that survival is not domination, it is balance. Healing does not arrive all at once. It begins with one act, one decision, one seed pressed gently into broken ground. The earth responds to love the same way it responds to rain: slowly, quietly, but faithfully. If this story meant something to you, don't let it end here. Subscribe, because every week we share stories that remind you who you're becoming. And if you know someone who needs this message, send it to them.